Welcome back to part 3 of this week's Shabbat services for Saturday, October 31st, 2020. And in the Hebrew calendar, it is Chessman 13 in the year 5781. And this is Shabbat services for Waymaker Messianic Jewish and Christian Center USA. We have just completed reading the Torah portion, Lech-Lecha, which is Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through Genesis 17, verse 27. I'm going to recap on this because there is a ton of things. As you were listening to this reading straight from the Messianic Jewish Family Bible Tree of Life version, you could tell there was so much activity that went on in this portion this week. Abram is commanded by God to leave the land that he knows and trust God that, as he was saying, I will show you a place where I will bless you with this place. Once there, Abram almost immediately experiences famine, tension, war, but through it all, God is with him and he promises that greatness is going to come to him. He promises him that, his seed will multiply. And Abram's wondering, how's that going to even happen when I do not have children? My only heir is Eleazar, my servant. So there's a whole lot that happens. And when Abram does hear God and he actually, he does listen to what God is saying, he's leaving his relatives and everyone he knows. And actually, what he's leaving, these relatives are also engaged in pagan worship. They have idolatry going on, and God is kind of separating him from that. He has he has selected Abram to journey to the land that he was going to show him, and he was going to make a great nation out of him. And he also made a promise to Abram, saying, "And I will bless those that bless you, and I will curse those that curse you. And in all of the earth, all of the families of the earth will be blessed through you, through his seed." So Abram also took his brother's son Lot with him. Abram, again, was 75 years old when he got this calling from God. So you're never too old to get a calling from God. And luckily for Abram, he listened to that calling. There was a lot that went on after he followed that calling, but he did follow the Lord. Now, Abram was married to Sarai, and her name was spelled Sarai. And they all left their homeland to do what the Lord had asked. And so they they journeyed. Um, Abram went to the land of Canaan, and then he also went through the place of Sichem and unto Moreh. And the Lord appeared to him and said, "Unto thy seed will I give this land." So there he built an altar to the Lord who appeared to him. So he worshiped to the Lord. Now, the interesting thing happened then. They went into Egypt, and they were struck with famine in the land. And Abram went down to Egypt. He told Sarai that, you're a beautiful woman. They're going to see you. They're going to kill me. No, they're going to know that you're my wife, and they're going to kill me to take you. But if you tell them that you are my sister, they will spare me, and they will bless us. So what happened is that is exactly what happened, and Abram became very rich through that. But then the Lord put on Pharaoh. Um, Actually, the Lord let it be known that uh, Sarai was Abram's wife, and Pharaoh found out, and he was angry, and actually told them, take what I've given you and go. Get out of here. Take your wife and get out of here. Get out of my land. So they did. They left. So God also protected Sarai during this time. Um, was also a time frame that actually Pharaoh did not touch Sarai, so she was not the covenant between her and Abram was not broken either. God made sure that that did not happen. So the Pharaoh of Egypt had actually sent the couple on their way. Along with the riches they acquired, they were able to keep those things. So they returned to the promised land, and Abram's great wealth became a source of tension with his nephew. So there was issues there. So Abram and Lot, they were both very rich. They ended up separating, and Lot chose the lush um, area, but wicked area of the region of Sodom and Gomorrah, while Abram remained in the Holy Land. Um, and once the two have become separated, God again said to Abram, he again told his commitment to Abram and his descendants of the land of Israel. And Abram again was saying, I don't have a son. Is my son to be Eleazar, um, my servant? And the Adonai said, no, you will have a son that comes from your body. So then Abram ends up having to rescue Lot because again, as we see, there's a war of the four kings versus the five kings that occurred, um, and then we have that conflict where um, the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah actually fell into the tar pit, and then all of their possessions, their whole kingdom was captured, and Lot was in that. Um, he was captured along with that. So Abram got word of that and actually went to rescue Lot. Then we're introduced to the king of Salem, Melchizedek, who brings forth bread and wine, blessing the God of Abram for strengthening his hand. Now, this is like a type and shadow of Yeshua, who is from that order. He is not from the order of the Levites. He is the high priest. He is, if we look again, Melchizedek says to the king of Salem brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of El Elyon, the God Most High. So we can actually liken that to Yeshua as a type and shadow. And he blessed him and said, blessed be Abram by El Elyon, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be El Elyon, who gave over your enemies into your hand. And then Abram gave him a tenth of everything. So this is where the tithe began. So you've got lots going on here. You've got elements of bread and wine, which of course are in the Lord's Supper as well. Now we've got also a tenth of everything, which is a tithing. Then the king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the people, the possessions, take for yourself. Abram took none, it said he didn't want anything of them, but to give Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre their share. But he didn't want it to be said that, hey, look, I made Abram rich. No, he wanted no part of that. Now, as we continue on with the Torah portion, we see that Hagar and Ishmael, the story of Hagar and Ishmael, Sarai became this was actually a downfall that occurred, that they were not waiting on the will of God, because God did promise Abram a son, but it was not supposed to be through Hagar. But Sarai actually gave Hagar to Abram, thinking that, I'm 90 years old. This is the only way that we're going to get a child. I'm not going to be able to bear a child at this age. Um, so she Hagar became pregnant through Abram, and that's how Ishmael came. But he was not the promised son for Abram. The promised son was Isaac, and God made that extremely clear um, to Abram that Sarai would have a child. Now, in this Torah portion, Abram is now renamed Abraham, and Sarai is renamed Sarah. And God tells Abraham, as for your wife Sarai, you shall not call her by the name Sarai. Rather, Sarah is her name, and I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son from her. I will bless her, and she will give rise to nations. Kings of the people will come from her. And Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said, will a son be born to a 100-year-old man and a 90-year-old woman give birth? Um, so he did not realize the miracle that God was about to give to him. And as we end this Torah portion, we have the circumcision of all the males. That is the covenant that was made to between God and them. So in the household of Abraham and his servants, his male servants, that occurred. So Abraham, his name was changed from Abram to Abraham, meaning the father of multitudes, and Sarai was now Sarah. I just want to mention some more about Melchizedek. Melchizedek, as I said, was a shadow of Yeshua, and Yeshua is our high priest. And it is said that he is in the order of Melchizedek, which is a different order of the priesthood. And Yeshua is our high priest, and he is appointed, of course, by God. Melchizedek, however, was human. He was born and died, but there's no discovered genealogy for him up to this point. The Melchizedek order is not the lineage of the Levites, which from birth became priests and is not Mosaic law. Melchizedek blessed Abram and blessed the Most High God, El Elyon, and Abram tithed to Melchizedek. Abram did not take the goods from the king of Sodom. He gave a tithe, but did not spoil Sodom. So we need to remember that. And when we look at the decision that Sarah had made and chose Hagar, it brought a lot of grief, and that grief still goes on, and that conflict still goes on. Actually, Sarah actually hated Haggai for actually conceiving, and it actually was a huge mistake that was made, as far as um, her not them not waiting on the will of God, because God did bring Isaac to them. That was the chosen son that was to be brought forth. But they became impatient, thinking, well, this has got to happen. If this is going to happen, they actually brought forth um, that will, thinking that they were going to make this happen. Um, God prophesied over them, saying that they were going to, that Abram would be blessed, and that his seed would be so numerous you couldn't count it. So they were kind of rushed the will of God, and that's kind of a lesson that we need to wait on the will of God. God's timing is not always our timing. And that's a point that I want to kind of drive home here as well. God has a perfect will and plan for each and every one of us. And, if we deter from that plan, if we don't wait on his will, sometimes we shortchange ourselves from having the best plan that he has for us. So to rush it, to go about and make something happen, maybe God had a better way. He probably did. I shouldn't say maybe, he absolutely does. And maybe the way that we made something happen wasn't what he wanted. And there's also consequences to that. And of course, now we have um, we can see where this was Islam was birthed here out of Ishmael. Um, and Hagar was actually told that um, God did hear her cries, and He did promise that Ishmael would be blessed and also be a mighty nation, but that he was also going to be like a wild man, and his hand would be against every man, and he would, his hand would be against his own kind as well. So, so we can see where we are today with all of that, and that we go way back to ancient history where this all began, and the problems still linger, or I should say exist, and they're going to continue to exist, unfortunately. Um, but once again, to reiterate, the chosen son that God was speaking of to Abram was Isaac. And Isaac is one of the patriarchs. Abram, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob is Isaac's son. Now, the last segment of this Torah portion had to do with circumcision. And when we think about that in today's standards too, the circumcision of the heart, that is a covenant between us and God. Um, so God had made a covenant with Abraham that every male was to be circumcised, and then from that point, every newborn, this has to do with the males, was to be circumcised on the 8th day of life. Now, there's a hygienic purpose that exists as well. Spiritually, it sanctifies as the it sanctifies as God's people. So in the New Testament, the Brit Kadashah, Yeshua died on the cross and separated us from sin. So we need to accept his gift of salvation, be born again, for that transaction to be completed through. So that's a little bit about that. So anyway, that is probably the most that I wanted to bring out and recap on the Torah portion. We are going to move ahead now with the half Torah, starting with Isaiah chapter 40, verse 27, and ending with Isaiah 41, verse 16. Why do you say, O Jacob, assert, O Israel, my way is hidden from Adonai, and the justice due me escapes the notice of my God? Have you not known? Have you not heard? Adonai is the eternal God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not grow tired or weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives strength to the weary, and to the one without vigor he adds might. Even youths grow tired and weary, and even young men stumble and fall. But they who wait for Adonai will renew their strength. They will soar up with wings as eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. I always love that passage. And coming conqueror, be silent before me, O islands. Let peoples renew their strength. Let them draw near, and then let them speak. Let us come together for judgment, who has stirred up one from the east. He calls justice to his feet. He gives nations over to him and subdues kings. He makes them like dust with his sword, as driven stubble with his bow. He pursues them, passing on safely by a path his feet has not traveled. Who has performed and done it, calling forth the generations from the beginning? I, Adonai, am the first and the last. I am He. The coastlands have seen and fear. The ends of the earth tremble. They draw near and come. Each one helps his neighbor, and each says to his brother, "Be strong." The craftsman encourages the smith, who smooths with the hammer, who strikes with the anvil, saying of the soldering, "It's good," as he fastens it with nails so that it will not totter. my servant, my friend, but you, Israel, my servant Jacob, whom I have chosen, descendant of Abraham, my friend. I took hold of you from the ends of the earth and called from its uttermost parts, and said to you, you are my servant. I have chosen you, not rejected you. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Behold, all who were angry at you will be ashamed and disgraced. Those who quarrel with you will be as nothing and perish. Though you will look for those who contended with you, you will not find them. Those who warred against you will be as nothing at all. For I am Adonai your God, who upholds your right hand, who says to you, fear not, I will help you. Fear not, you worm Jacob, you men of Israel, I will help you. It is a declaration of Adonai, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. Look, I will make you a threshing sledge, new with sharp, double-edged spikes. You will thresh the mountains and grind them up, and you will make the hills like chaff. You will winnow them, and a wind will carry them away. A storm wind will scatter them, but you will rejoice in Adonai. You will glory in the Holy One of Israel. That's the reading of the Haftorah. God's everlasting covenant to protect and defend Israel is absolutely evident here, which brings us back to Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. I will bless those who bless you, but whoever curses you, I will curse. And in all the families of the earth will, in all of you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. So we're back to that. That is definitely seen here in these passages that God will definitely stand up, and the enemies of Israel will, be definitely dealt with by Adonai himself. Um, and the other thing that parallels to our Torah reading is waiting on the will of God. Waiting on the will. Wait for Adonai. Adonai will renew your strength. Adonai will mount you up with wings as eagles. You will soar. You will run and not grow weary. You will walk and not be faint. Adonai will be there for you. But, again, to not go about your own way of doing things, but waiting on the perfect will of God. The perfect will of God, I mean, it can't get any better than that, because He does have our best interest at heart. So He wants to bless us, His children. So we need to wait on His perfect will. Isaiah reminds Israel of the Creator's greatness, and the time will come when He will give the tired strength, and to him who has no strength, He will increase strength. And we should wait on the will of God. And God Himself encourages us by saying, do not fear, for I am with you. Be not discouraged, for I am your God. Behold, all those who incensed against you will be shamed and confounded. Those who quarreled with you will be lost, because God will deal with them. I'm going to close this portion with prayer. Father God, thank you. Thank you for your Torah and half Torah portion. Very powerful to know that you have our perfect will and plan in your hands. And we need to wait on your will because you wish to bless us. And we thank you. We honor you. We glorify you. We thank you for your word. And this was such a powerful lesson today. In Yeshua's mighty name, amen and amen. And we're going to come back for the next section, and we're going to do the Brit Kadashah and take a short break, and we will return.